Well, I renew my love of Mary each Advent. We take a moment or two to see her in this story. In fact, the tradition is that today is Joy Sunday. The words in the traditional church, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. It doesn't tie to Mary per se, but her spirit is here. We light the rose candle in the wreath. We sing, "Lo, how a rose there bloometh." One time the preacher asked a group of children, why are there 3 purple candles and 1 pink candle, which we light today? And a little boy in the group raised his hand and said, "It's a girl?" It is in some sense. Mary's feminine representation of God's story in the Christian myth today is strong and needs attention. Her song is often present on this Sunday, this 3rd Sunday in Advent. It's why we sing of a rose, her symbol, and read the Magnificat, our version, to remember there is no birth without a female body, no call to turn upside down the world, the perceived powers for the good of humanity without a woman's voice. No story of shattering the proud or the powerful without the feminine song of a scared girl who finds faith is stronger than fear. Strength like the sinew of the mother's arm, the poet said, that shatters pride, that levels tyrants, that serves mercy. The traditional words of Mary's song, or the Magnificat, are, "For behold, from now on all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name, and his mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent empty away." Through a lowly girl in a story who has just heard that she is pregnant and knows she is in incredible trouble with her family and her village, the words are not of self-pity. They are not self-centered. They are revolution. A call to change heart, a call to change the world. May they be heard today, here, by each of us. May they be heard in the halls of Congress. May they be heard in all places that need a wise challenge to the status quo. It is through these words of the feminine, that I arrive at another story for us. See, I've been watching the Band of Brothers series show on HBO about World War II. I don't know why, I am just obsessed with World War II right now. The show is about the battles of Europe and the Pacific, and one scene stood out for me this week as a ship of Marines is sailing through the Pacific. Men piled on top of each other on deck respond to the distant shout of a leader who calls out Christmas hymns on Christmas Eve. "Silent night," and they sing. "Joy to the world," and they sing. As they sail to the next battle on some God-forsaken island, having endured wounds and death, they sing dutifully, "Peace on earth and mercy mild. God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise. Join the triumph of the skies. Hail the heaven-born Prince of Peace. Hail the Son of Righteousness. Light and life to all he brings, risen with the healing in his wings. Mild he lays his glory by, born that man no more may die." A wish, I think, they knew deep inside. The soldiers in the show almost hesitate at this line, "Born that no man more may die." As they think of death, their ever-present companion, in a world where soldiers have gone crazy watching their friends die in battle, battles that seem to be avoided by other choices. Duty and the enduring of hardship is theirs, and they sing. It was out of interest in that scene that I went looking for a story for us today that lands us in the Battle of the Bulge, in the forest of the Ardennes in Belgium. The Battle of the Bulge was the last major German offensive campaign on the Western Front during World War II. The battle took place from December 16th, 1944 to January 25th, 1945. It was launched through the densely forested Ardennes regions in eastern Belgium, northeast France, and Luxembourg. The offensive was intended to stop the Allied use of Antwerp. The Germans encircled and tried to destroy the Allied armed forces. During the battle, between 63,000 and 98,000 Germans were killed, missing, or wounded in action. Over 89,000 Americans were hurt. 19,000 were killed. The Bulge was the largest and bloodiest battle fought by the U.S. in World War II, the third deadliest in the American history of war. In the middle of this, 3 American soldiers, one badly wounded, were lost, wandering in the snow and the cold in the Ardennes forest. They wandered looking for the American lines. They walked for 3 days while the sounds of the battle in the distance, in the hills and the valleys called to them, but they could not find their way back. One evening, they came upon a small cabin which appeared in the woods as if it had appeared for them. They approached carefully, nothing being safe, no one to be trusted, but they badly needed shelter and help. Smoke in the chimney proved that at least there would be warmth there. On the inside of the cabin was a woman named Elizabeth and a boy named Fritz, who was 12. They were from Aachen, Germany, and their home had been bombed, so they retreated to their family hunting cabin in the Hurtgen forest, 4 miles from Monschau near the Belgian border. When the knock came, they blew out the candles and went to the door to find 2 American soldiers standing in front of them, one lying on the snow. To Elizabeth, they seemed like boys. She noted that they could have burst in and killed her and her son, but they knocked instead. So she, in the middle of this forest, in the middle of a bloody battle, invited them into her home. They spoke to each other in broken French. She listened to their story, put them near the fire, and sent Fritz to get 6 potatoes and Hermann the rooster. The rooster was named after Hermann Goering, the Nazi who Elizabeth didn't care much for. As the soldiers warmed themselves by the fire and sipped coffee given to them by Elizabeth, they knew the first comfort they had had in weeks. Elizabeth started to cook dinner: coffee, potatoes, and a rooster sarcastically named for a Nazi commander. It would be their Christmas Eve dinner. While Hermann roasted, there came another knock on the door. Fritz went to open it, thinking there might be more lost Americans. But instead, there were 4 German soldiers. Knowing the penalty of harboring the enemy was execution, Elizabeth, white as a ghost, pushed past Fritz and stepped outside. There she spoke to the corporal and 3 very young soldiers who wished her a a Merry Christmas and told her they were lost and hungry. And Elizabeth told them they were welcome to come in to the warmth and eat until all the food was gone, but that there were others in the house that they would not consider friends. The corporal asked sharply if they were Americans inside, and she said they were 3, lost and cold, just like the Germans. And there was 1 wounded. The corporal stared hard at her and said, "Okay." And she said to them, "It is a holy night. There will be no shooting here." So she made them leave their weapons outside the door. Dazed, they entered into the house. And Elizabeth demanded the guns of the Americans, and she took them and put them outside next to the Germans' guns. Understandably, there was a bit of tension in the cabin as the Germans and Americans eyed each other, but the warmth and the smell of roasted Herman and potatoes began to take the edge off. The Germans produced a bottle of wine and a loaf of bread. While Elizabeth tended to the cooking, one of the German soldiers, who was an ex-medical student, examined the wounded American. In English, he explained the cold had prevented infection, but he'd lost a lot of blood. He would need to rest and eat. By the time the meal was ready, the atmosphere was relaxed. 2 of the Germans, who were only 16 years old, the corporal, who was 23, Elizabeth, and the 3 Americans sat at their simple table, and Elizabeth joined them in prayer. As she said the Christmas grace, Fritz noticed tears in the eyes of the exhausted soldiers, both the Germans and the American eyes. In the morning, the German corporal gave the American a map and a compass and showed him the way back to the American line. Elizabeth returned all the weapons. The enemies shook hands and left in opposite directions. Fritz and his parents survived the war. His mother and father died in the 60s. He got married and moved to Hawaii, where he opened Fritz's European Bakery in Honolulu. And for years, Fritz tried to locate any of the German or American soldiers without luck, hoping to corroborate the story and see how they had fared. In 1985, President Reagan in Germany gave a story and referenced Fritz and his mother. And then in 1995, a television show discovered that one of the American soldiers was living in Frederick, Maryland, in a nursing home, and been telling the same story. So Fritz flew to Maryland in January of 1996 and met with Sergeant Ralph Blank, the American soldier who still had the compass and the map given to him by the German soldier. Ralph told Fritz, "Your mother saved my life." Fritz said the reunion was the high point of his life. Fritz Winken managed to contact one of the other Americans, but never the Germans. He died in 2002, almost 58 years to the day of the Christmas dinner in the woods in the family cabin. He was forever grateful that his mother got the recognition she deserved. What does the story tell us? One thing this story tells us is that a tiny shred of human decency happened one Christmas Eve in an impossible situation, where death and violence was king. And whether it is that there was only one story like that or many, the point is that a certain spirit can cut through the violence and the hatred, turn the world upside down, turn a world of tyranny and war upside down. The story tells us that a little courage to confront difference, armed with a common story of a holy night, can heal and save and set loose love into the world. It says that, like Mary, the feminine embodied in the myth of the Christmas story, who shows a fierce unrest with conflict, that Mary spirit that pushes away war and violence for truce and reconciliation and love above all, exists in the story to teach us something. That like her spirit, ours should rejoice in freedom. Should show us that we too have strength like a mother's arm, that we can shatter pride and level clay-footed tyrants, fill the hungry and challenge perceived riches, and reward those who serve mercy. It says to us that if they could do this one night in the middle of an impossible war, we can do it in our comfortable lives. If in an impossible situation, love can bind together enemies because a mother demands it, we can also be agents of peace and love. With the spirit of Mary, to stand strong for what is right and find and fill those who are hungry in our lives, not necessarily with chickens named for tyrants, but with hope and compassion, we too can be part of this story. It says that we can challenge our own self-righteousness and see the enemy as those who suffer and need our love also. We too can cross boundaries and live for mercy with each other, heal wounds, break down divisions, erase battle lines, forgive mistakes, challenge misperceptions, and unseat pride. We too can live into this story like a mother in the woods in the war, ready to share what we have, to open our lives to those who need healing and demand a peace with a fierce feminine power. Mary sings, "My soul magnifies God. We are enlarged. My spirit breaks out, rejoicing in the face of freedom. That God, something now within, yet not mine, has glanced at his daughter of hope." What will your soul magnify this week? What will it magnify this season? Will it rejoice in freedom, shatter pride, erase division, fill the hungry, keep faith with mercy? I know it can. Let us magnify this story through our lives, today, this week, and in this season. Amen. Amen.